Thanks, Justin. So we'll go ahead and get started. As Justin mentioned, I'm the VP of Solutions Engineering here at Command Link. I'm happy to take this time to meet with everyone. Thanks everyone for their time for both this session and the previous sessions that my partner in crime, Joe, has led. Today's focus is going to be more around the foundational aspects of how we're securing networks from both a traditional edge and a SASE edge perspective, right? These components lay the foundation that ultimately informs the overlays like the XDRs, MDRs of the world, and the informing of those overlays gives that contextual enrichment, the understanding of what's happening on the network as it pertains to not just the edge, but what's happening in my clouds, what's happening in my remote user base, and so forth. So we're going to dig in to that today, and we'll get kicked off here. So we live in a far more distributed world than we've ever lived in as far as networking goes, right? The traditional perimeter has dissolved, so to speak, right? Or is it's expanded or become more distributed than it's ever been. The traditional way that we used to secure networks was very centralized and focused at the edge, right? So security at the edge, whether it was my branch or if it was my data center or one of my corporate headquarters, I would put in place my firewall to handle my egress of my traffic, securing that edge and having my remote access users come into that centralized firewall or concentrator to create an entry point into the network. And everything was able to be regulated through those methodologies, right? But as everyone here knows, right, we've grown exponentially since, specifically COVID, right, where the work space is no longer just in the office now, right? So we have users all over the place that are working from home or working from a remote location, and it becomes a far greater challenge to secure those workflows. Not only that, but we now live in a far more cloud enabled environment too, as we have conversations with our customers all the time, right? We're constantly talking about cloud enablement, cloud readiness, how you're securing your cloud, how you have visibility into those cloud tenancies, right? So this kind of cocoon that we've lived in has now kind of expanded, and so security becomes a challenge at that point. And what are the challenges that our customers are facing, right? Well, as we've grown our networks have matured or grown by merger and acquisition, or I've deployed as a lead network engineer or security engineer at a company, I've deployed specific point solutions to handle these security needs, right? Whether that's my firewall or adding next gen firewall feature set, UTM, UTP capabilities to that edge, whether it's deploying a specific device like an IPS, IDS in my environment, vulnerability scanner, things of that nature. Pieces of hardware that served a very real and functional purpose, but became another point solution, right? And over time, that becomes overwhelming for a number of reasons, right? So uh, it becomes hard to correlate events. It becomes hard to manage all of these multiple disparate solutions as we have what we call vendor sprawl, and it lends itself to complications and complexities within the network, right? So our job as partners and within Command Link on my team specifically within the solutions engineering team, our job is to create simplicity where complexity exists, right? One of the biggest conversation tracks I'll have with my customers is around creating a repeatable template for them, right? I want to create standardization and uniformity within my customer environment. And that's always a receptive conversation, guys, right? And why is that? Because a lot of our customers are dealing with this, right? What I'm showing you here. I have either multiple different SD-WAN solutions because I had to quickly envelop a new M&A that we did, and I never got the chance to standardize them on our platform. But hey, you know what? It works. We can communicate between each other, so we're good, right? Nobody really circles back to that, or they'd like to circle back to it, but they just don't have the time, right? So that's one example where we have, multiple point solutions that are creating this kind of challenge from an ongoing management perspective and from a security perspective as well. And Gartner says it well. In essence, complexity is the enemy of availability, security, and agility, right? So where I have complexity, it becomes more of a challenge to have a secure network because I don't have the correlative capabilities between all of these disparate solutions when I have an incident that I have to respond to. Okay. So how are we addressing this? If you think about the traditional edge, right? We've come through multiple evolutions, right? For the beginning of the 2000s, we were primarily an MPLS private networking transport kind of deal, right? All of our customers would leverage either a combination of some internet for their internet egress, but mostly private networking to ensure that they had the type of performance that they needed for their private traffic, right? That their critical applications, their voice, their video, their key applications that were hosted in their data center, and that was very necessary. But now, as our customers are migrating more into the cloud, these private, expensive networks became obsolete, right? And you've seen that roughly around the 2015, 2016-ish timeframe is when SD-WAN got introduced into the fold, right? And SD-WAN said, okay, Mr. Customer, we're going to help you to leverage these, DIA and broadband and all of these, commodity-based transports to get the same performance that you would get out of, a traditional, private site-to-site, point-to-point circuit, right? And the way it was able to do that and accomplish that was it was able to identify applications and make application aware routing decisions, based upon metrics of not just how the application needs to perform, but what is the health of the upstream circuits that are attached to me, right? So SD-WAN is now making real-time decisions based upon latency, throughput, jitter, utilization, right? In addition to looking at these specific applications. So it changed the way we do networking, right? And so now a lot of our conversations, and I'm sure a lot of you can attest to this in the conversations you have with your customers, are not so much around migration away from private networking MPLS and to SD-WAN. It's more of a, let's have a conversation of migration away from one SD-WAN to another or from SD-WAN to SASE, right? And that's where we are now. It's understanding that this next evolution of networking, because personally speaking, the effect that SD-WAN had in the marketplace, specifically in removing this kind of need for MPLS, is the same type of impact that SASE is going to have on the market. Okay. So what is Gartner's vision for this, right? Gartner's, future network innovation is no longer about just increasing performance, but rather simplifying, right? There's that key term that I used already, right? About simplifying operations through what? Automation, reliability, flexible business models, okay? The integration of networking and security in a cloud native architecture is this major shift that I'm talking about, this next evolution. And it's here, guys, right? This is not something that's, hey, 3 years down the line. This is here and now. So what does this do for us, guys? What is SASE providing to us? Well, the key term I think to use here is convergence, right? And the emergence of this convergence in our space and what we do. Okay. And SASE is saying, I'm going to converge what you have in 3 or 4 disparate physical appliances at your data center, and I'm going to make those appliances sit in a cloud, but not as physical appliances, as like software in the cloud, right? Think of it that way. So I can run multiple streams of traffic through this SASE based cloud based architecture and leverage things that I would either get with multiple different devices or with having to turn on licensing to a specific device and then have to consider, well, what's my throughput? What's the impact of my throughput on this device if I enable this particular feature set? Those appliance conversations go out the window now, right, guys? We're not worried about updating and patching and ensuring that these appliances meet these specific throughput needs as my security needs evolve and change over time, right? So SASE is designed to address the challenges of the distributed workforce that we live in, this cloud-based architecture, right? And ensuring that we're doing so in a unified way. So it's basically saying your traditional edge that exists, it's still there. It's still very much there, guys, right? I don't want you to take away from this meeting. I'm saying, hey, the traditional way of doing this is totally dead. It's not dead. It still exists and there's still a need, but it's just one piece now, right? My network is not safely in this bubble anymore. I still do have traditional branches and sites that need security, and I can still secure them at the edge with a traditional firewall SD-WAN, but I also have cloud requirements, right? And my applications that were once hosted in my data center, those real-time applications, those are now hosted up in AWS and Azure and GCP, OCI, right? These are cloud tenancies. I have a lot of SaaS in my environment, right? I'm never really even needing a specific application. All of my users just are running this stuff over the internet. Okay, so it's a totally different ball game. Same thing applies with remote users, right? So if you think about securing the edge, we should really transform that thought process into securing the edges, right? Where are my edges? Well, my edges are at my data center. My edges are at my branches. My edges are in my remote workforce. My edges are in my cloud, right? So how does that challenge present itself from a security engineer's perspective, right? How can I ensure that my remote users and my cloud environments, whether it's shadow IT or my remote users, if they're trying to log in from an unsecure location or unsecure endpoint, how do I secure that? How do I ensure that they're adhering to the security posture that I've put into place when they're sitting at a branch, right? And that's where this comes from. It's being able to distribute what your security posture is within the branch to wherever you go throughout the world, right? And that should follow you no matter where you are. And that's the type of security practice that we're trying to deliver. All right. So what are some SASE architectural attributes that we're talking about? Well, I've already hit on these, right? We want to support all the edges, all those edges that I've just described. There needs to be some cloud native component to this, right? Because we're leveraging a cloud solution for security and internet egress, SWIG, firewall, IPS, some of the things that we're going to touch on, the components of SASE security within the SASE cloud. It needs to be identity driven. So again, I want this to follow my users wherever I go. There needs to be some sort of tie-in to my Active Directory, whether it's Entra ID or LDAP or whatever we're doing from an Active Directory perspective. And globally distributed. Like we want to have a POP presence throughout the globe to be able to, not have to home run somebody that's working in London all the way back to the only POP that I have that exists in Dallas, Texas, right? So globally distributed is a big key as well, right? And so we're taking these security point solutions that essentially have, always existed in one location and now making them available globally, okay? So what are some of the security components of SASE? Look, in the interest of time, guys, right? I'm not going to take you through, hey, you have to have a firewall, SWIG. That's very basic, right? It's very essential. I don't want to skip over it and say that it's not important. It's very important. But for the sake of time, knowing everybody here knows what Secure Web Gateway, NGF, IPS does for you, this is all key components of a SASE deployment and architecture, okay? What are some other components? ZTNA. So I mentioned this, my remote user base. Look, the remote access paradigm's changing, right? And it has changed. The way that we traditionally connected via an SSL VPN, a VPN client, what would happen is I need to work from home, so I would log into my VPN client, and that would typically authenticate against a VPN concentrator or a firewall that existed within the corporate environment. And once I had that access, I was able to get to any resource I needed to within the private network. That's how VPNs worked for a very very long time, right? That has completely changed now. We have to take a more pragmatic approach to the way our users not only are trusted or untrusted, but once they get into the environment, what they actually have access to, right? So ZTNA is taking a trust nothing, verify everything approach, right? And that starts with the end user. That starts with saying, hey, Mr. End User, in order for you to gain access to my network, first of all, you need to have an account within my Active Directory that gives the permissions for you to be a remote access user. That's one. We need to ensure that you have multi-factor authentication. That's two. We need to be sure that you're meeting all the device posture profile checks that I've stood up for you within my SASE environment. So whether that's ensuring that your Windows updates are current, ensuring that your Windows firewall is up to date, ensuring that your endpoint devices, whether it's Sophos or Sentinel-1, have the latest revisions, right? I can make these determinations to say, yeah, you're a trusted user, but you don't pass the test. So in order for you to actually gain access to my network, you're going to have to pass these device posture profile checks, right? Then once you've passed those, right, you're into the network. Now ZTNA says, you don't get access to everything. I'm going to microsegment you. I'm going to say you can only access this specific application or this specific file share within the corporate environment. Okay, you don't have access to my entire private RFC 1918 space, right? There is very selected siloed things that you're allowed to access. And what does this do? It creates a minimized account breach risk, right? So this minimizes the damage attackers can cause if this person becomes compromised. This attacker only has access to this one specific thing, right? They can't, proliferate themselves throughout the entire network. So ZTNA is a huge component of this, right? And again, as we've become far more distributed, we don't have all of our users working from an office. This is imperative. It's table stakes. So that's why VPN has evolved to this ZTNA posture. What are some things I could do to protect my other edge? So we talked about the traditional edge. We talked about the user edge. What about the cloud edge? How am I protecting these cloud environments that are become so essential to my operations? Well, CASB is one way, right? So Cloud Access Security Broker. Enabling a CASB within a SASE environment allows me to identify what's allowed in and what isn't, right? So we all know that there's specific applications that our users should be using within our cloud environments, but there are also some unsanctioned applications that I don't want them to use. So CASB is essentially, verifying that these applications are allowed to be accessed, right? I mentioned shadow IT. As this is a security boot camp, let's focus a little bit on some of these numbers, right? So 90%, 97% of cloud apps used in the enterprise are shadow IT. That is flabbergasting, right? I personally did not think it was that high, but it is, right? There's a high effective use rate of applications that are not sanctioned, that are outside the expectations that the enterprise IT sets for its user base. Now, there's obviously going to be a middle ground where we'll allow some of this and so forth, but a lot of that is, unsanctioned applications. And you guys can read through the rest of these again. I kind of want to blow through some of this, but the other thing we can do to secure our cloud environments is DLP. And DLP is data loss prevention, right? So, what are we talking about here? 95% of cybersecurity breaches are caused by human error. Human error meaning, hey, I plugged a rogue USB stick into my into my laptop, and now it's calling home, and I'm exfiltrating data, or I'm posting something on LinkedIn with customer information, sensitive information, right? How do I prevent my users from making these mistakes, right? That's where DLP comes in. So this helps enterprises protect their data by detecting and blocking attempts to exfiltrate this sensitive data, right? And there's a whole host of technical things we can do within the environment to ensure that these things are met, right? Whether it's preventing specific images from being sent with OCR, whether it's preventing specific social security numbers, medical data, things like that, that truly protects our corporations from this type of data exfiltration that again is done by the user. So why should I care? Why are we here, guys? Why does SASE matter, right? Eliminates the appliance-centric complexity, which I talked about. It delivers the integrated context-aware security that informs the overlays that Joe has been talking about, right? Without good data, the overlays don't matter, right? If I don't have good data of what's happening on a customer network at any given time, you could have all the security components that you want. It's not going to help you. I need to understand how and make correlations between what's happening within my firewalls, within my cloud, within my LAN, within my servers, accessing SaaS applications and so forth, and then create this. Again, I keep saying that contextual enrichment that comes from having all of this data at our fingertips. Now the AI and the intelligence that we're using within these platforms is able to get a clearer picture and therefore a better security posture, right? So it improves that incident response and visibility. It reduces operational overhead, right? There's a whole host of benefits from this, from migrating to an SD-WAN SASE environment, right? And then just overall the growth factors here, right, guys? So it's rapid growth, as I mentioned. This isn't something that's 3 years down the line. It's here, right? There's reports about this year-over-year growth. According to Gartner, by 2026, 60% of new SD-WAN purchases will be part of a SASE offering. That's up from 15% in 2023. So this is real, guys. As you're having these conversations, our customers are wanting to have these migration talks, and move into this new kind of environment. Look, not everyone embraces this, and that's okay, right? Not everybody embraced SD-WAN. I worked at a company that didn't as well at first, right? We said, hey, you know what? All right, this may be just one of these new technical things that comes around for a little bit and goes by the wayside until we realize, no, this is here to stay. Let's actually start to build something out to accommodate. You're seeing the appliance-centric vendors that are out there, guys, pivot to capture some of this market share, right? The Palos of the world, the Fortinets of the world, the Ciscos of the world, these companies that have depended upon hardware are now all speaking about SASE, right? And the benefits of it, because they realize how important this is. So this cloud first approach in a cloud enabled environment that we live in, and how we secure that, and how we create this foundational security from a networking perspective to inform the overlays is absolutely paramount. And these are the conversations that we need to be having with our customers and be comfortable having with them. To end my portion of the presentation, guys, I'll send this deck out to everyone. I added some qualifying questions for you guys in here, right? As you're having these conversations with your customers, what are some key discovery questions that you can ask to kind of get an idea of, what their current environment looks like, and if this would be a potential fit for them. So feel free to kind of look through that, and we'll send that off to you after the meeting. But I wanted to make sure I left some time open for any questions. So I kind of sped through that pretty quickly, but does anybody have any questions they want to bring up?
Looks like we have one in the chat for you, Dom.
All right.
Marcy's asking, how do you see SD-WAN and SASE adapting to leverage machine learning at the edge?
Oh yeah, Marcy. Yeah, great question. That's all of these components are adapting to leverage, whether it's AI or machine learning, whatever the case may be, right? And that's the key, because we're creating this foundational data lake, if you want to call it, right? I have the data on the network. The network has the data that will inform not only these XDR overlays, but will inform the AI that I'm introducing into my environment, right? So the more cohesive I can make my environment, the easier it is to leverage the machine learnings of the world and the AIs of the world because they become more effective. Yeah, great question, Marcy. You got it. Come on, guys, don't be shy. Who else has something? Do you think a fully automated edge is a good idea? Oh, a fully autonomous edge is a good idea. Andrew, so I don't know if you want to speak up, can you give me some more context around that? Okay. Um, do I think a fully autonomous letting the edge take over? Oh, so it's not so much taking over, it's just automating creating automation from a traffic control standpoint, a traffic visibility standpoint. It's not necessarily taking over. It's just automating things that we were already doing, right? So, if you think about the way I was configuring networks back in the day, I was leveraging what was called policy-based routing. So I was able to dictate where specific, traffic would traverse based upon subnet, based upon specific destinations, right? Or sources. As SD-WAN introduction said, hey, I'm going to take that to the next level. I'm gonna look at your applications and route them real time based upon these metrics. So automation's already been kind of given to the edge in some way, shape, or form there. KC, can you please go back to? Oh, okay, yeah, sure, man. Let me know if you guys need to hit anything else up. Like I said, I'll have Justin send this deck to you guys so you can have this in your toolbox.